All right, welcome back to another episode of the No Effects podcast. It's been a minute since we got together. Due to a little bit of lack of time, the two of us have been rather busy, and I somehow or another keep adding more projects to my plate, probably than I can handle, but it's what it is. It's the life of a struggling artist, I suppose. Anyhow, this time we're back with another set review. Hey, isn't that what we just did? No, but it was the one before that. This new set is called Bloomburrow, and it's kind of a cutesy woodland creatures storyline, so it's like following like rats and frogs and otters and mice and whatever bullshit. And I think it has something to do like some kind of homage to some other intellectual property. I can't remember the name of it, but people were saying as such, like there's some sort of like fantasy world that has these anthropomorphic sort of creatures or like little critters that do fantasy shit. So but yeah, whatever the name is, I couldn't tell you, but that was somebody said that's where they got the inspiration from. But it isn't like a direct Universes Beyond type of product. And it's another regular old standard set. So after having gotten Assassin's Creed Universe Beyond, and then Modern Horizons 3 before that, and then whatever we had before that was still had some pretty powerful stuff. I don't know, man. They're all blurred together. We say this every time, but we're getting to this such a critical mass of so many new things all the time. It's hard to get overly excited or thrilled about what's happening. Again, they also have to balance the game too. So we have sets that like are like Modern Horizons that don't even print into standard and couldn't because those cards are way too pushed. But we get those kinds of sets, and it's pushed for Commander, and we're spoiled as hell, and we're like, damn, look at all these cards and reprints and shit that I could use for all these decks. And then we get this, and it's standard, and it's kind of down powered and or under, maybe even underpowered. I don't know. We were talking about it before we started recording that generally speaking, every set we get like 1 to 5 cEDH like staples. Like these cards are going to go hard. They're going to go multiple lists. They're great. This set, I can tell you that I'm probably not slotting any cards into any of my decks. I mean, we already did the stream where we played Commanders from the set. We're going to talk about a couple of them here. Neither of us are very excited about any of them. Like, sure, they're cute. They do things. It's different. And when you have a set pod that's all coming from the same, block of cards, it's really easy to keep it kind of balanced because they are balanced against each other because of limited and whatnot. So in those regards, playing Bloomburrow decks against other Bloomburrow decks, kind of fun. It's cool to see what they can do, whatever. But, you're not going to take these to a tournament and win anything with them, I don't think. There isn't a Nadu in this set. There's not a Stella Lee. There's not a Nagila. I don't even think there's any Nagila cards, so... it is what it is. Yeah, maybe. We'll have to wait till the Mind Sculptors talk about that because they're the Gila card guys. So we've got about 15, 16, something like that cards. I'm not even going to bother breaking anything into honorable mentions or making any sort of top 10 sort of list. We're just going to talk about cards that we found interesting. Whether or not they'll actually see any sort of play is up for debate, but these were cards that we could get mildly excited about, or if not even excited, more just they piqued our interest in some sort of way enough to talk about them. And that's really all I got. So, I will also add, I guess, I added like 2 cards to this list. Almost the whole list is all Kirk. So I'm going to let him run away with the rest of this introduction into the cards, and we'll have some discussion, and then we'll send you guys on your merry way.
Sounds perfect. I will say there's definitely a few of them that I'm excited about. I know 2 or 3 will make some lists of mine 100%. And some of the other ones I'm definitely testing. Some of them will just be specific to 1 deck or 2 decks, but there's a decent number here that will make lists for me. But I think this first one that we want to talk about, to me, is probably the best cEDH card in the entire set. And I think this is one you will see, you should expect to see. I think this card's really good. And so that, without further ado, that card is Mockingbird. It's 1 blue and X. It's a bird bard. 1/1 with flying.
Bird.
That 3 times fast. I did it. So it's this one. This one's a weird one. So it says it's a 1 mana, 1 blue and X, 1/1 flying, and it says you may have Mockingbird enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast Mockingbird, except it's a bird in addition to its other types, and it has flying. So, reasons this card is good. There's two very huge primary reasons this card is good. Number one, it's tutorable with Ranger Captain of Eos. It's a 1-drop in the deck, so you can cast your Ranger Captain instead of just finding Esper Sentinel, Birds of Paradise, Ragavan, or maybe some combo enabler or like a Walking Ballista in certain decks. Those are kind of what you would almost 99% of the time somebody's finding one of those. And it's probably, it's probably Esper Sentinel 70% of the time, for crying out loud. This is an actual viable option because not only can this come down as a 1-mana Ragavan on your opponent's board that has flying, it can come down as a 2-mana copy of your opponent's dockside, because the way they worded this card, it's not 1 blue and then X and you copy something with CMC X or less. It's the total mana value you spent to cast this card. You copy a creature with mana value equal to that or less. So for 1 blue mana, you can cast this and copy a Ragavan with flying, or an Esper Sentinel, or Birds of Paradise. 2 mana, you've got a dockside, etc.
If you do copy the Ragavan, you now have a Bird Bard Monkey Pirate.
Damn right.
Hell yeah.
Now that's a win in my book.
Francisco, eat your heart out.
Exactly, right? Get that, pirate bird. The really cool thing about this, though, seriously, you could cast this reasonably for 3 or cast a Ranger Captain, find this, and then maybe the same turn, depending on your mana situation, slam this down as a copy of your own Ranger Captain. So then you'd have, boom, 2 Ranger Captains, one to stop your opponent's win on their turn. Hopefully it gets back to your turn with one of them still in play to sack it to protect your win attempt. I mean, that's huge.
That's spicy.
The other big thing about it, being that it is a 1 CMC in your deck, for ad nos decks that are playing like maybe a Phantasmal Image effect, this might just be better, because typically I think the ad nos decks that are playing Fimage are basically playing it to copy dockside more or less, right? This can do the same thing, but it's a 1 CMC card. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Islane?
So I guess I lied. This is a card that I could see myself playing. There were very few, though, that I was all that interested in. Anyhow, it as far as it being a 1 CMC copy creature spell, or creature that copies another creature, or ETBs as a copy of a creature, it's the cheapest one we have. Phantasmal Image is 2 mana out the gate. This is 1. And if you happen to be copying a 1 CMC anything, which we already gave you lots of choices, it's now the cheapest, period. It's 1 mana. 1 blue mana, copy a thing. Pretty cool. The only thing I don't like about it is the limitation of it can't be like Metamorph, where you can copy a 1 ring or something. You don't even have the option to pay into making it a 1 ring either, which, if you could, maybe a 5 mana 1 ring is still better than no 1 ring, right? In that regard, it's worse. But yeah, 2 mana to get a dockside that's the same rate as Phantasmal, and if that's the baseline, it's good enough. And then you also have a 1/1 flyer here. It stays a 1/1 flyer.
There were one. It would get there. It would get that creature's power toughness. So it'd be a 1/2 if it was dockside. And yeah, having a flying pirate.
Flying, yeah.
Yeah, and being a pirate in that case, having a flying pirate dockside. We all know Malcolm decks like flying pirates, so shit, that's relevant for that, right? Like.
Yeah. Any Malcolm deck should probably be playing this, just because you do have that sort of additional fun stuff that could affect. X equals 3 is probably your sweet spot at around 4 mana. When you start paying 5-6 mana, if you're getting a Con Sphinx and you can afford it, do it. But most of the time, you're probably not going to be able to. It's just going to be targeting small creatures. But like you say, you could copy a Tymna, or if you're in a blue farm list, this can be a good Tymna attacker. On top of having netted you, dockside mana or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. That flying part is going to be actually pretty relevant. Hell, even casting it, copying something relevant, and having a Tivit blocker for one time. Sometimes Tivit doesn't like to see flyers on the other side of the board because they need to get through damage to do their thing. So yeah, I think this card's awesome. I think this one, I didn't even read it till just now. The flavor text is effing hilarious. Laughing at you. No, I'm laughing as you. That's perfect. That's great. I like that. Perfect design all around. But this is the card that I'm by far and away the most excited about from this set. This is an actual cEDH card. There's enough decks out there there's enough decks that are devoted to clone effects as is. And then there's basically 90% of all decks that have blue are always running Phantasmal. They're probably running Phyrexian Metamorph. Some of them are also running the vehicle. Imposter Mech. Yeah, Imposter Mech. Some might even be running other clones on top of that. I know the Flesh Duplicant has also been pretty popular lately. So anything that's 2 CMC or less that doesn't have a ton of limitations is playable, and this may maybe this is better than Flesh Duplicate because you keep it around longer and it's technically cheaper. Maybe this is better than Phantasmal because you don't have to worry about it just dying to any target. Maybe this is it's not going to be better. I can't say it's better than Metamorph just because a Metamorph can get you that one ring or something else you might need. So it's probably not replacing that, but this could probably also replace the Imposter Mech if you don't care about it, because Imposter Mech sometimes can feed Dockside, and also if you're not on an Artifacts Matter list, then maybe you don't want it anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And like I think enough times having it be a flying creature, having a flying body to block a Crom, to attack for a Tymna, to attack for a Malcolm, probably relevant. Who knows? Maybe even in Yuriko. Who the hell knows?
Notably, too, if you make a copy, use the 1 mana effect and copy like a Sarah Ascendant, if you do fall below the 30 life, it still has flying. And it'll still have the lifelink, so you can maybe get back above the threshold.
Not irrelevant. You're not wrong.
As much as I know you hate that card, I had to bring it up.
I do.
So if you had to pick another one that you think is probably the next most playable out of what we're going to talk about today, what would you say that?
It probably falls between 2 cards, and it's probably it's probably this one next. It's Valley Flood Caller, and that's 1 blue and 2 colorless for a 2/2 Otter Wizard. It has flash. It has you may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash. So it's kind of a pseudo Born Upon the Wind effect. It doesn't let you cast creatures with flash, but it lets you cast your non-creature spells. The other lines of text, it says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, birds, frogs, otters, and rats you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, and untap them. It is an otter itself. It's an otter wizard. So who the hell knows? You could do some weird storm stuff, and this thing could get huge, and you could smack somebody with it. You could turn your Birds of Paradise into kind of a mini Bergie effect. If you're cantripping through your library, you're untapping your Bird of Paradise along with making this big. So there are other weird little neat synergies you can do with it for sure, but just being a 3-mana 2/2 creature with flash that allows you to cast non-creature spells as though they had flash is pretty decent. I know there's a couple of artifact creatures that let you do artifact and colorless spells for free, but this is, being able to cast any non-creature spell as though it has flash is pretty good. Being a blue card to pitch to both forces is pretty good, and being a wizard, it's a relevant creature type, so...
Just the flash clause that it gives to non-creature spells is good enough. The rest of it is all pretty irrelevant. It having flash itself is relevant as well, but it's not Born. It's not as good as Born, but it is flash this in, and now I can also flash in, a mana rock just before it becomes my turn. So now I'm ramped a little bit. Especially if it's maybe a mana rock that comes in tapped, which we don't really play a lot of those, but they do exist. If you're in mono blue, maybe you're on the diamond. I don't know. You can flash it in at end speed or at instant speed at somebody's end step, and it comes into play. Or when it comes to your turn, you have it there untapped, ready to go. I'm sure there's a lot of other better examples, but
I do love it. You can kind of hold up mana if you're in a mildly controlling-ish list or control tempo, whatever. You can hold up mana, try and interact with your opponent's turns, etc. And if they do nothing, or if they don't do what you need to worry about stopping, you can flash it in, untap, slam your Necro Dominance, Necropotence, go to your end step, do the whole draw your number of cards, and wham bam, thank you, ma'am. So being able to kind of split that mana up over 2 turns, whereas Born Upon the Wind, you need to cast your whatever and then have blue and 1 left over to then still Born Upon the Wind. So I don't know, being able to split up over 2 turns isn't nothing.
Yeah, if you just want to have the ability to play whatever's in your hand, outside of creatures, if you're in a spell heavy, like you said, kind of a Drago control sort of shell, this is going to be pretty good for you because you're going to be able to flash out your artifacts, and you're going to be able to flash out enchantments and other things that you would normally have to do on your turn. And in Draw Go, that's really important because now you don't have to waste the mana on your turn to play out your Sylvan Library. You're just I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to cast it at the end and save this mana for, whatever. I don't think it's bad. I don't really have any decks that play this. I play Born in a couple lists, but outside of that, I don't really have any decks that are dedicated to trying to win on an instant speed at somebody else's end step through cards like this that are enablers for that. So, I don't have
that actually brings me to brings me to two questions on it. One, I think this like, do you think this will be enough to maybe slot into a Nimrus deck, and maybe we see a little bit of a return to Nimrus, because that was kind of a hot tech for a minute before everybody kind of switched over to Talion, but this having flash is relevant for Nimrus, right?
Sure. I mean, and then what's the Simic one? Rashmi. When
Yeah.
when Rashmi came out, that was pretty. It was pretty popular as far as being kind of draw go, and you got what was it, card selection, I think, off of casting shit on other people's turns. So, yeah, in decks like that want to do things on other people's turns, this is great. This is just another piece to the puzzle, more redundancy for them. Good for them.
And
As far as like
aside from all those, though,
every blue deck, maybe not, because you do have ability to play Born, and Born is, I think, just better. But
sure,
if
but
you
there are
want
decks
more,
that play like Born, they play the land, and then like Emergent Zone. The
Liberator.
deck I was going to ask you, are you going to try this out in Zur?
Well, see, I already run Born there. Back in the day, it was more like you ran Emergent Zone, but I'm not. I don't even think I'm on Dog Wants to Will on Zur. I might be, but I'd have to look. It's been a minute since I played it. I think when Yawgmoth's Will was like the way to win the game with that deck, and it was basically just a Breach deck in different colors, which was also prior to Breach even being printed. When it was doing the Shimmermere stuff, try to do everything at end step, or Necropotence, and then do that and try to do it all before you lost the stuff, and then sometimes also casting a Yogg's Will in the middle of that to then recast some of the things again before they all go to exile. If you're all in on a strategy like that, then yeah, having more of these effects is good. You're probably on Emergent Zone, you're probably on this, you're probably on, what was it, the one white Gandalf, the fucking Liberator. There's several of them if you're in the right color in Esper, especially. You basically get all of them. But once Born got printed, I kind of went onto that, and that's like the only one.
That's fair. I'm curious if any ROG side decks will pick this up and try it, just because I know they're on both Necrodominance and Necropotence, and kind of, I mean, I think the deck that wants to play this isn't probably trying to win with Acid Oracle, Demonic, whatever. They're probably trying to win with Breach. So I wonder if ROG side will try it or not. I think it's a cool card. I think it'll see some play.
What's next?
I think probably the one I next would not be surprised to run into is, and we're staying in blue here, is Polywog Prodigy.
It's the one I was going to pick.
Well, then you read it. It's yours, buddy.
Oh, well, I didn't pick it. I was just going to say that was the one I thought you were going to pick next. But yeah, Polywog Prodigy. It is a creature frog wizard, 1/3 body, 1 generic, 1 blue to cast. It has evolve, which is whenever a creature enters with greater power or toughness, you put a 1/1 counter on it. So if you play a 2 power creature, this will go up with a 1/1 counter. If you play a 4 toughness creature, this will go up with a 1/1 counter. Then it says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than this creature's power, draw a card. When you first play this, it would have to be a 0 spell, but then as soon as you play anything that has 2 power or 4 toughness, which could just be your commander or whatever, this evolves, it goes up to a 2/4, and then anytime anybody casts a 1 or 0 drop, you draw a card. The issue I have with this is it's not just immediately Esper Sentinel, I draw a card if you do anything. It's not Ristic Study, it's not yada yada yada. It's not even... I want to say this is probably going to be less effective than even like the Fairy Masterminds of the world, because those still just are going to trigger, I think, more often. This requires you to invest the mana into it and then time of playing more creatures that have bigger power or toughness to make this bigger. If you're in a good setup where you have the commander that's gonna, you play this, you immediately then cast your commander, this thing immediately evolves. Now you've got something kind of online. It is only opponents, so it's not like some of the ones where if a player casts 2 things, you get the thing. It's only opponents, but it isn't limited to just once a turn, which is also good, because a lot of cards have been nerfed in that sort of way. So yeah, I think it's decent. I think it'll see some play. The issue I have with it is that, again, it's not Ristic, it's not Esper, it's not even maybe Mastermind or Ledger Shredder. I think all those are going to be more consistent at drawing you cards. This is going to be more of a play this out, fingers crossed I draw some cards off of it, and that's less than ideal.
That's fair. I think on turn 1, this is insanely strong, because if you're
on
either
the play,
holding...
Yeah,
I mean, then it's just bonkers, because you're either going to make your opponent second guess whether they should play their rocks, which who knows. But other than that, yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's a little bit on the slow side. I mean, if someone does go for like a breach loop and they're recurring lion's eye diamond, you're probably drawing a bunch, and maybe you'll draw into the right interaction to stop them. Mm-hmm. So it's good for that. It is a 1/3. It's a wizard. It's a frog. I don't know how relevant frog is. Who knows? Being a wizard is relevant because if you're on
wizard cycling,
wizard cycling card or the land that makes them uncounterable, which Cavern of Souls, God, I couldn't think of that right now. So you could do things to make this uncounterable. Plus, being blue, you draw it late, you just pitch it to force, etc., etc. But yeah, I think this one will see some play. I don't know how good it'll be. So if you're on like Kennen, maybe when they're flipping into anything, damn near anything they flip into is going to involve this, right? So
sure.
If you're looking for a cheap draw engine with legs, this is something to look at. Like you said, I don't know if it's at the power level of
kind of hypercritical. Because you're supposed to be when it comes to like card quality in this format. Sure. And a lot of times when we do have these conversations, we're like, I love this card, so I'm just going to play it anyway, even if it isn't the best thing. And I'm just being hypercritical. I was hypercritical of this whole set because it's just every card like just has holes in it. I'm like, eh.
It is a force draw, which is a little rough. It's not a May, so got to be careful if you're running in Thoracle decks. It is a big butt, so initially survives a Bowmaster, which is kind of nice. So. Yeah, I won't be surprised to run into this card.
It's also likely to evolve pretty quickly to where it's probably going to get out of bolt range.
I think it'll see some play. I won't be surprised. I mean, maybe in 2-color decks, maybe in some 3-color decks. I won't look to see it in 4-color decks or higher, but who the hell knows? I mean, there's decks like Kenrith where they could dump counters on it or something, and then just any spells your opponents play, you're drawing cards.
Oh, so. I mean, I guess that is a thing. If you're in a deck that is doing anything with counters or can manipulate 1/1 counters, then that's the deck for that, for sure. The problem is that 90% of those types of decks are like Selesnya, so good luck. But fair. if you're in Simic, you're still going to get that green access to it, and I don't know, it could slot into your Merfolk deck that has green Merfolk that tend to throw 1/1 counters on other things, and there you go. I mean, it's not the worst card. It's just not. It's not super exciting either. It's just kind of there.
Not a slam dunk for any stretch of the imagination, but I won't be surprised to run into it. And it might do really good work. It might be one of those cards that it's a bigger sleeper than we think. Who knows?
Speaking of sleepers, so I'm just going to run right into this next one because you were hesitant to put it on the list, and the more we talked about it, the more I was like, this card goes on the list. And this actually probably does see some cEDH play. Not every deck, but like in quite a few. So it's another blue card. This is an instant called Into the Floodmaw. Costs 1 blue. And it has Gift. Now, Gift, the text changes. This is a new mechanic from the set. Gifting means you promise an opponent a gift as you cast the spell, and they get whatever effect after the spell resolves. But before... Like, the spell has a result, aka, like, everybody passes priority, and then the spell starts to resolve, then they get their gift, then you do the thing. There isn't any point in there where they can interact, so in the case of some of these that say gift a card, like, they will get to draw a card, but they won't be able to, like, draw a counter spell and then counter your thing. Just so that's clear. So this one is weird. It's the only one I saw that's like this. Almost all the other ones are, like, gift a card, basically. This is gift a tapped fish, which just sounds stupid, but here we are. And it says, you may promise an opponent a gift as you cast a spell. If you do, they create a tapped 1/1 blue fish creature token before its other effects. So I like this because it's, okay, the gift is supposed to be like the drawback, right? And in most cases, you're getting some sort of effect, but then you're letting somebody else draw a card, which kind of sucks most of the time. And in that case, I wouldn't run pretty much any of the other cards that have gift on them. But this one, not so bad because you're giving them a 1/1 token, which does, who cares? And it comes into play tapped, so it's not even going to be able to block your attacks if that's what you're planning on doing. If you're getting rid of a big-ass threat to give them this, so worth it for only 1 mana. But the rest of the card says, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So this means you give them a fish. If you don't give them a fish and you just play this 1 mana, you return a creature an opponent controls to its hand. Boom, Bob's your uncle, that's it. It's just a 1 mana bounce spell. In that regard, probably not as good as Chain... Actually, using it offensively, it's probably better than Chain of Vapor because they don't have the option to sack land and also bounce your shit. So, probably one of the best bounce spells in the format when it comes to that. But it does kind of suck compared to Chain because it has the opponent controls part. So in the case of Chain, you can target your own stuff and then sack your own lands to target your own stuff to do a lot of shenanigans, sometimes winning the game off of said shenanigans. So it's got ups and downs. So, but then if you do give them the fish, you can target any non-land permanent. So it doesn't have to be a creature. You can get rid of a Rule of Law or other stacks piece artifact, whatever's fucking you, you can get rid of it. But again, weakness being you can't target your own stuff. So it's got ups and downs, but it is probably, again, one of the better bounce spells in the format, and I think this one sees some play.
For me, I like probably was it Alchemist Retrieval? Is that the one?
That's
one blue, you can target your own. Yeah, one blue, you can target your own, and one blue and one, you target an opponent's thing.
Being modal, I think that might be better, but it is more mana. So
yep. I mean, and this one, like you said, one blue mana, get rid of anything, put it back in their hand, probably pretty strong. And like I don't hate giving a 1/1 creature. I mean, unless they're using Diabolic Intent or if they're on Cradle or something, it's not the end of the world. Tapped creature, like you said, they can't block. I think thematically it's hilarious in a set full of otters and raccoons and stuff. You're giving a here's your fish. That's weird. But yeah, overall, I'm not a big fan of it. I won't probably run it in many decks, but there might be one or two lists I'll try it in and see.
I don't run a ton of bounce spells anyway. Most of the time it's Chain, and I probably don't replace this. I don't replace Chain with this. But if I did want an additional 1-mana bounce spell, I think this one's probably the one to play. Like you said, Alchemist Retrieval probably right there with them. There's been some other ones too that were like, you know, the like the Into the Royals of the world, where they're like two mana and it does the thing, but then if you kick it, you can like draw a card or whatever, and if you have the extra mana, that's fine. But usually it ends up being too much, and I don't really run those anymore. So like, yeah, you're not at a loss for options when it comes to blue bounce spells, but this one felt just good enough to be included here, where we're talking about it.
Yeah,
Decent.
I could see it fighting for slots in a weird way against like Cyclonic Rift in some decks. If you know, Cyclonic Rift is the oh shit button, overload it and get rid of all your opponent's stuff. But many times you just cast it for 2 mana to get rid of whatever you need to get rid of to do your thing. And being 1 mana instead of 2 just does have that huge upside, especially if you're on, you know, your CMC Matters decks, your Adnas of the world. So I could maybe see it more than I initially thought, but who knows? Plus the artwork is just great. It's weird.
I mean,
great.
you don't get the benefits like in a deck like Yuriko because it's still just a 1-drop. You know, having a 2-drop, you know, just a little bit better for, you know, the burn or whatever. And there's other decks out there that care a little bit about, you know, CMCs and whatever. But for the most part, if you're in Nas, like this goes in over, you know, a 2-mana one. You know, just to cut down just that extra little bit. It's one card deeper you can dig, right? So
for sure. Should we round out the blue cards? And there's one more blue card I liked on this set that I wanted to talk about.
We didn't do this on purpose, but it worked out. So yeah, might as well.
And I think this one's pretty good. It's Dour Port Mage. 1 blue and 1 generic. It's a 1/3. They really like their 1/3s in this set. 1 blue and 1 for a 1/3 Frog Wizard. Another Frog Wizard. Whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. And it's got an activated ability of 1 generic, 1 blue, tap it, return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. So what this means, if your creature dies, it goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, you don't get any effect. If your creature gets exiled, if your creature gets flickered, if your creature gets bounced to your hand, you're drawing a card. Where I think this card's great is if you're in some kind of a weird flicker loop, if you're in a food chain deck, your commander's probably your outlet if you're in food chain, but here we are anyway. If somebody exiles your card, you're drawing a card. If you're in some kind of a dockside bounce loop with the artifact Cloudstone Curio, thank you. There's also the Elf Stone or whatever the hell it is in the Lord of the Rings set. Same card. Yeah, this will draw you cards in the middle of all that loop. So
also, if you're in other weird decks, you can use Meticulous Excavation to do the same thing.
Hey, there you go. See, and I love that this has got that 1 blue and 1 tap it activated ability. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand. So somebody's pointing removal at something that you need to save, like your Orcish Bowmaster or something, you can bounce it back to your hand and draw a card. So.
And then also replay it and re-get its ETB. That's what I was going to say. Like anything with ETBs on it, you're just going
like a dockside. Hey.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be that important. It can just be something that ETBs and gives you a clue or something. Something stupid and something that nobody's going to interact with. If it looks innocuous enough, you're like, pay. There was a card that came out with the Modern Horizons 3. It was like a white creature that ETB'd and makes a clue. I think it was either 1 white or 1 and 1 white. But so you pay 2, you play it, then you pay, you get your clue, and then you pay the 2, return it to your hand, you draw a card, and then you play it, make another clue. You essentially, for like 8 mana, drew like 4 cards, which is on rate, really. This is going to be great in Flicker decks. It's going to be great in any decks that want to abuse ETBs. The only limitation that I don't like, I mean, I realize why they have to do it, is the tapping of it to do it. If it was just pay 2 and return a creature, this is just a great engine. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do that already. I mean, obviously, dramatic reversal type shit exists, which that you're already going to win the game anyway, so you don't need this. But there are other cards like, say, an Archaeomancer or whatever, where you can use this to bounce the Archaeomancer to your hand, then use the Archaeomancer to like bring back something that untaps all your creatures, like dramatic reversal maybe, without needing Isokon Scepter. This makes sort of a loop. You could do other things like that with ETB creatures. That's just gonna draw your deck, or
even
there's a number of effects.
Yeah, so even Displacer Kitten, if you're flickering your creatures that's drawing your card, that's pretty bonkers. Yeah, I think this card's cool. I think this one will see someplace. Somebody will figure out some busted shell for this, and I won't be surprised to see this Frog Wizard drawing my opponent, 20 cards a turn or something ludicrous. So,
Yep. And then just being kind of sort of useful on its own. I suppose since we did all blue, looks like black is like the next most. Black or red. Whichever you want to go with. I'd say we leave the multicolor for last.
Okay,
we can go with black, because I was going to say we can talk about that fun little combo we were just talking about.
Well, I'll start us off with a black card I'm actually kind of excited for. It's Iridescent Vine Lasher. It's a 1 black mana, 1/2 Lizard Assassin. It has Offspring, which is another new mechanic from this set, because, we need more mechanics, right? Jeez.
We do.
It's got, you may pay an additional 2, this one's Offspring is 2 colorless. You may pay an additional 2 colorless as you cast this spell, or 2 generic. If you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. And it's got landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. So, if you're in, there's two scenarios where I could see this doing big work. One, if you're in some weird Ashaya deck with Ashaya Aquarian Ranger shenanigans, where you get infinite landfall, boom, you kill everybody. The deck that I'm going to try this, the deck I'm going to try this out in is in black-red Obnixilis, because landfall,
1 damage,
1, boom, there's the lucky number. And being a 1/2, it can attack and do a damage, boom, that's another ob trigger. And if I have 3 mana when I'm playing this, I'm making 2 of these, so every land is 2 triggers for Obnixilis. So that's where I'm excited to try this.
And I mean, making a token copy that you can sacrifice to your tutors, your draw spells, whatever. Also not bad.
Yeah, I mean, having Born Upon the, or not, what is it? Beseech the Mirror, Diabolic Content. Yeah, hell yeah, right? Like, tokens are real. So this is the card I'm excited for that. I don't know if there's any other decks that might want this or might try it. But that's the 2 I could think of. I mean,
if I could put it into my Tago and Kadama list, I would, but unfortunately it won't fit in that list. But that's the kind of deck, that's the only deck I have that does landfall stuff. And this deck, that deck would love this card, but unfortunately can't play it. I don't have any other landfall or like lands matter style decks, but I mean, this might be something for Gitrog players. I mean, they're already doing landfall shit. You're just whittling people down. I know Gitrog's goal is always to just get to its combo, but in the interim, while you're doing shit,
yeah, possibly. I mean, it's a low enough cost at 1, so yeah, this one's interesting. I'm definitely excited to try Obnixilis, and I think there's enough different cards to try. That there are flex spots in this deck that this one's definitely going to try and fill one of those roles for a while for me, and we'll see how it does. I mean, I know that deck doesn't play a lot of lands, but sometimes when you're exiling cards Obnixilis and all you hit 2 or 3 lands in a row, you're like, son of a bitch, I need to play anything. Hey, boom, this solves that problem. So
I saw some of these cards and thought that they were interesting. There's quite a few that you had put on this list that I was like, yeah, I thought about that, but it was just like, is this really good enough? This one in Obnixilis, yes. In any other black deck, Really depends on what you're doing. I mean, a little bit of attrition doesn't hurt nobody, but in cEDH it's so fucking fast. Like attrition, pinger decks, just like aristocrat style decks, don't win fast enough unless you can find a way to lock out the table from doing what they want to do, and then you slowly drain them out. So that sort of effect, fun as it may be, is not that great. But Obnixilus does enable that whole thing. So I think, yeah, shoe in for that deck. Probably not played anywhere else, but I guess we'll see. Again, not terrible. Definitely shoe in for Obnix. Anywhere else, maybe not. But it also might slot into something else that we're not thinking about, because I know there are landfall decks out there. I don't see them at top end of the meta, but they still exist.
The next one that's a black card that I'm kind of excited about. I think it's a weird enough card that I'm pretty pumped to do some weird brewing with it. It's Hazel's Brewmaster. This one, it's 1 black and 3 generic for a 3/4 Squirrel Warlock, and it has Menace, and it has, whenever Hazel's Brewmaster enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, from any graveyard, and create a food token. And then it has another separate section of text. Foods you control have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Hazel's Brewmaster. So it's a pseudo Agatha's Soul Cauldron
it's like
on legs.
But then it doesn't attach it to a creature, it attaches it to a food.
Yeah, to any and all of your food.
I think this probably goes in that food deck I made, that Golgari one. For sure.
For sure.
It might be a thing that could make it better too, because maybe I could find some kind of combo bullshit with it. Well, speaking of combo bullshit, we already found out one that's kind of funny. What was that other card?
So Tree of Perdition was the funny combo that came of it, which is like a 1 black and 3. Here, I'll read it. 1 black and 3 for a 0/13 plant defender, and it has tap it, exchange target opponent's life total with Tree of Perdition's toughness. So if you have that in your grave and you exile that with Hazel, then your food tokens have tapped them to exchange target opponent's life total with the food's toughness, which is
0.
Yeah, you get the idea there. That one's cute.
That card
hilarious.
Is old. I remember I used to play that. What's the Abs? It was before Arcades came out. The Abzan toughness.
Doran?
Siege Tower. I used to play that, and I used to play Tree of Perdition in that deck when I first built it, because I was like, this is too hilarious to not play, because like, oh, now it's a 40/40 or a 0/40, and you're at 13 life, and now it can attack and hit for 40. So like, I'm just plowing into people. This just reminds me of old jank combos that we try to pull off in casual and or lower powered competitive, and yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yep, it's cute, and it'd be hilarious if somebody does it. I think the better and more likely scenario you'll see with this is you exile a Devoted Druid with it. So now it's kind of a Bark Form Harvester is essentially like a Machine God's effigy. You exile Devoted Druid, now your food tokens have Devoted Druid ability to tap for green mana, put a -1/-1 counter on them, to untap them. Boom, all of your food creates infinite green mana. Which I think that is a very real possibility that we'll see that in a deck, because you see Machine God's Effigy played, you see Swift Reconfiguration played to turn Devoted Druid into what is it? Not an equipment, vehicle. So then you can use it for infinite green mana. So this is just a black-green. You've got blue-green with Machine God's Effigy. You've got white-green with Swift Reconfiguration. You've got this now. And Thyam uses Devoted Druid for infinite mana, infinite shenanigans, infinite counter, whatever they do. So this might be something they could look at. I don't know what deck would play it, if that would even be something that deck would use. But black and green notoriously have a crap ton of tutors that can find either any card or creatures. So there you go.
Yeah.
And putting it in the grave is great. Yeah, I mean, you could always entomb a Razaketh and boom.
It's the same as Necrotic Ooze, right? Like, you're already in black, you're already able to do whatever you need to do with it. So yeah,
and it does exile 1 target card from a graveyard. So even if you're not comboing off with your creature combos when you're playing this or attacking, you can still attack. You can still eat at somebody's grave to hopefully slow them down. So it's got a little bit of grave hate utility on it, on a 4 mana 3/4 with Menace. So the Menace ability helps for being able to get in when you are attacking, to activate it multiple times each iteration of your turn. So I don't know. I don't think this card's amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's cool enough where I think some people will try and and brew in this space and come up with something funny with it. I mean, notably, the food that it makes don't have any kind of summoning sickness restriction, so that is huge. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
there's Razaketh, there's Voted Druid, there's Tree of Perdition, there's God only knows. I mean, there's a lot of great activated abilities on cards.
And
So
I mean, you're gonna love it when you play this deck for the first time that you just brewed. You know, not with this as a commander, but like this in the 99. You just brewed it. You got this thing, and you're like, Entomb, Tree of Perdition, and people are like, huh? What are you doing? And then you do it, and they're like, oh, well, fuck.
you're on, they're on spell table. They go back, check the lobby. No, it says cEDH. Okay, here we go. What the hell?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but it's happening. All right, so we got one other black card. This is actually one of the cards that I added to the list. Not because it's good enough, not because it's gonna absolutely see play, but just because it was good enough interesting enough to have a conversation about. All right, so this card is called Stargaze. It is a sorcery. It costs X and 2 black. And it says, look at twice X cards from the top of your library. Put X cards from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose X life. So, this is very reminiscent to me of a card I used to play in Kalia. And I want to say probably other decks too, but it's just an old card that's kind of been outclassed at this point. I mean, it came out in 5th Dawn, which is what? 20 years ago. So I mean, it's an old card.
Dinosaurs roamed the earth then, right?
Yeah. I was a wee young adult. And plunge is it's one generic and a black for an instant. It says choose one, sacrifice any number of creatures. You gain 3 life for each sacrificed creature. That doesn't really matter. Or pay X life, look at top X cards of your library, put one of those cards in your hand, remove the rest from the game, and it has Entwine. Very rarely would ever entwine it. It was always just pay the X life. So you pay the 2 mana, you pay, say, 30 life. You look at the top 30 cards of your library, you pick one, and everything else gets exiled. It's very much like a Forbidden Tutor, like a Tainted Pact or a Demonic Consultation. So very, very similar to those styles, but it was a way to dig through your deck, find the one card you needed, and go. The unfortunate part would be is if you already didn't have both pieces of a combo, or you needed 2 cards and then you pay the 30 life and you just lose all those other cards. So that's why it's kind of fallen out of favor. It can just exile like part of your win con, or it can exile some other shit you might need. But if you just want to dig like 10 cards, for 10 life. So kind of along the same lines, it's in that suite of cards like Necropotence and other things. And this card feels very similar to that. However, instead of 2 mana and paying a bunch of life, you still pay life, you still draw cards, you end up putting some cards in your graveyard instead of exile, which is actually kind of better because Breach exists and all of that. But let's say hypothetically you pay 2 black and 3 mana. So you've paid 5 mana for this. You get to look at twice 3, so 6 cards from the top, and you get to put 3 of those in your hand, and then the other 3 go in the graveyard, and then you lose 3 life. So, I mean, 5 mana, lose 3 life to get 3 cards, and then put 3 in your graveyard, which you're in black, so like some of those could be relevant. Could be a Wargorger Dragon, could be a fucking Obnix, it could be it could be anything you want. Whatever the case may be. Again, not the best thing in the world. It is sorcery speed, which kind of sucks, but we do have some of those flash enablers. We do have Born Upon the Wind. This is the kind of thing that can be cast at instant speed if you set it up right, although it's going to cost you more mana. When your X equals like 5, 6, 7, that's when you're really truly digging, and it's more like the other cards I've mentioned where you're actually getting to see a lot. The thing is that you're also getting to put that many cards in your hand and that many cards in the grave, so you may be able to set up some sort of combo. If you're using that creature we were just talking about, you may be able to put a good creature in the bin for that to now exile and get the extra abilities from, or you might be able to find, 1 or 2 combo pieces. You might be able to just find more value, find the land that you need, whatever the case may be. I don't think this is a bad card. I hate that it's sorcery speed. I wish it was an instant. That would really be the only major downside. If this was an instant, I think I'd run this in some lists just to test it out.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, a lot of times if you're playing this at 4 mana, let's say you're looking at 4 cards, putting the best of those that you want, 2 of those in your hand, the other 2 in your grave. Not the worst rate. And like you said, if this was an instant, it'd be a lot more appealing, but at sorcery speed, we'll see. I can see some mono black. Do you think a Crick deck would want to run something like this? They pay 4 life, pay the black.
Yeah, Crick likes this because you pay the 4 life, and then you pay whatever you want X to be. You look at a bunch of cards, you do lose that X life on top of it, so you might lose like 10 life or something. But at that time, at that rate, maybe you're looking at 14 cards, putting 7 in your hand, putting 7 in the grave, and losing 7 life, like plus the 4, so 11 life. Like that's not a bad rate at all. Draw 7 cards, lose 11 life, put 7 in the grave, and the 7 you put in the grave are ones you get to choose. So I mean, you put the ones you want the least, or the ones that are going to benefit you for being in your grave. Like it also might hit your delirium or your threshold, counts. Like it helps a lot of different things. Like I think this is better than people might initially give it credit for, but it's also, well, why play this and you can play Necropotence? Yeah, I get that, but this is safer, right? Why play this instead of the Plunge of into Darkness? Again, safer, and it doesn't exile all those extra cards. Doesn't cost you as much life. Why play this over Adnaz? You don't. Why play this over Pier? You don't. But it's got its niche little uses. I think in multiple color, like say like 3 color decks or whatever, this might be better or worse, kind of depending, because like it may be better than running Necro because it's just not 3 pips, it's 2. Maybe that makes it easier to cast. The same goes for Pier. Maybe because you're in 3 or 4 color, maybe this is just like a value piece that's good for you. I don't know. We're not gonna know. I've not tested this. It's all brand new shit. So I just thought it was interesting enough to talk about. I think that somebody may play this somewhere. I might even try it somewhere. I don't think it's terrible.
Admit it. You just love the artwork. That's why you picked it.
I mean, it does remind me of some spiritual journeys where I touched grass. And I think that wraps up black. And then otherwise, we've got, I think red is the next color to go, because that's the most of what we got.
Yep. So of the red cards, the one I am the most excited about, Agate Instigator. Yep. 1 red and 1 for a 1/3, shocker, this damn set. 1 red and 1 for a 1/3 Lizard Rogue. It's got offspring of 1 generic and 1 red. And whenever another creature you control enters, I keep wanting to say enters the battlefield. I know they shortened it, but whenever another creature you control enters...
I don't care. They changed its mana value like how long ago? I still say CMC.
Same. This creature
can't
deals 1
teach
damage
this old dog new tricks.
I'm too stupid to learn new tricks. Let's call it what it is. Yeah, whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it's Impact Tremors with legs and with offspring.
So it could be
huge upsides in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in any deck that's going to run those types of cards, this is good. If you're not really on a creature-heavy list, you're not doing any sort of flickering, you're not doing any sort of making a bunch of extra tokens, because this is just another creature. It doesn't care if it's a token or not. So, like, if you're playing, I don't know, what was the one that came out last year where it's it's not Cold Oath or Rebirth, but like the other newer version that is modal, where you can choose your own thing.
You can kill an artifact, or kill an artifact if it's yours, you make 3 dudes or something like that. That kind of thing.
Whereas the other one was just make 3 dudes and you had to sack your own thing. Anyway, this would actually probably be really good. I mean, I know Krenko isn't seeing cEDH play, but this on a Krenko deck, holy shit. Like, you're just like, tap Krenko, make 6 dudes, ping everybody for 6 damage. Like, that's pretty spicy.
Yeah, I like it that it's, I mean, being a creature is super relevant. You can find it with Imperial Recruiter. I think that's the red one, right? Because it is power 2 or less.
Yeah, it is power. Yeah.
So you can tutor it up with that. Being 1 red and 1 for a 1/3, right? It doesn't do anything by itself, but if you pay the offspring cost, this enters, then the offspring token would then enter, and I think deal 1 damage to each opponent. So, but yeah, I like it. Any deck that's looking at impact,
it enters first, and then the token is created. So that's correct. Yeah, you get a ping right off the bat for 4 mana.
Yeah, any deck looking at Impact Tremors should probably look at this. It's not an enchantment or an artifact, so it's not going to feed your opponent's dock sides.
I mean, if this shit was common, I'd be running it in several lists in Pauper, I can tell you that. Because pingers are big in that format. Yeah, this is just incidental damage. And there's only a certain amount of decks that really care about that. But like, you're doing dockside curio loops. This thing on the field, you just win. You don't even have to have an outlet. This is your outlet, and that's where you would be playing like an Impact Tremors or whatever. So like the Corvolds of the world, this is just another redundancy piece for that sort of strategy.
Yeah, Chthonian Nightmare loops with Dockside. Here's your payoff, and this can get brought back by the Nightmare, the Chthonian Nightmare, etc. So,
And if you want impact tremors, you're going to want redundancy, and there isn't a lot of that. There are a couple other cards, but this is just an extra piece, and that's good. This is very much middling, like the black version was. It's very much just a deck dependent thing. This also goes right into Obnix, so you have both of them, and they both do the ping for one, and you still get the triggers. So yeah,
I mean, I think anything where you're in a creature flicker, blink, bounce combo, and you're in red, and in essentially an Impact Tremors deck, I like this better than Impact Tremors almost always because, yes, it's slightly easier to kill being a creature for sure, but so much easier to tutor. So much easier to tutor a creature. I like it.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, 4 mana if we're in a grindy mid range game and it's stalled out, or 4 mana getting 2 of this effect is better than 1, right? Harder to kill 2 of them than it is 1 of them if you need it for your win. So
the other one I know you were gonna talk about next, or was kind of on the same level as this Coruscation Mage.
The Otter Wizard.
Yep. The Otter Wizard. It's a 2/2 for 1 generic and a red. Also has Offspring 2, so same thing, but it's not. This is just 2 generic. So if you pay 4 mana for this, you get a 1/1 token copy of it. And it says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's a pinger. It's very much like Thermo Alchemist, blah, 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 blah. There's a billion of them out there. This is just another one. But this essentially is build your own Gutter Snipe because when you have 2 of them, it does 2 damage. So, but each one is triggering individually, so this is another Obnix card. And
100%. Yep.
This is why all of these are on here, because Kirk loves Obnix lists, and here we are. And I don't even remember last time, if at all, that I've seen you play a fucking Obnix list, so
maybe I'll bring it out next week.
That. I was going to say.
Spoiler alert. I mean, this is a huge upside to the Firebrand Archer, which I used to play on that list, which was a 1 red and 1 for a 2/1 human archer that did the same effect. This one's a 1 red and 1 for a 2/2, so it's already bigger. The exact same effect of cast non-creature spells, 1 damage to each opponent. Yep. And this has Offspring, so you have the ability to make 2 of them for 4 mana. This is excellent for Obnixels. I love this.
Flamesmith is the other one, very similar, but that's only instant or sorcery. And then there's, like I said, Thermo Alchemist, that requires instant or sorcery to untap it. It pings to taps to ping. There's Blister Split Gremlin, which that one you have to pay and then tap, and then it untaps on instant or sorcery. There's the Unruly Catapult, which I think might be non-creature as well, but there's quite a few. There's a large amount of these pinger types. The issue is that unless you're in a deck that really capitalizes off this minuscule damage, they're just minuscule damage. In cEDH, we haven't found, outside of Obnixilus, there isn't a bunch of payoffs for just like dinking people for 1 damage.
Well, there is 1 or 2 decks that I have in mind that I'm going to try this out in also. It might be blasphemous to even say it. If I put back together Niv Mizzet, the Curiosity effect, while it just wins instantly in Niv Mizzet, slam a Curiosity on this, and every instant or sorcery or artifact drop, you're drawing 3 cards. That's bonkers. So the other deck I'm thinking about is Malcolm Kedis, because that's another deck that I play Obnix, or I play Curiosity. I think I play
Brawl and Shabraz too, because they play all of those.
Yeah. There you go. So this is another one of those effects where if you slam any of those effects on this, any spell you're casting that's not a creature, you're drawing 3 cards. So that's great. Again, it's a 2 mana 2/2 instead of a 2/1, so it doesn't instantly die to a freaking Bowmaster. Yeah, and being able to make 2 of them for 4, hey, that's when you're actually starting to ramp up the damage. There's another one, Geierson, the Keller Morph thing from...
Yeah, that's
another deck, but it's a pet project of mine I've slowly been working on tweaking and making better. Yeah, this one's going right in that deck as well, because he makes, whenever a source you control deals 1 damage to an opponent, he adds 2 to it, so this would deal 3 damage for... It's just another of that effect, and this is an upgrade.
Doesn't Torwaki do that too? Yeah, Torwaki the Younger reach. I think if another source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent player, deals that much damage plus 1 to that permanent player instead. And when you cast an instant or sorcery, he deals 2 damage to any target. 1 of the triggers goes on the stack. The copy's trigger goes on the stack. Then this guy's trigger goes on the stack to make each of those 1 pings 2. So you do 4 damage to the table. And then he also deals 2 damage to any target. So you can do like... Yeah, that could be exponential pretty fucking fast. If this thing was able to be played in Pauper, it would be another huge slam dunk.
There's another big one that the Lost Caverns of Ixalan gave us, the Is it O'Hare? OJER. Is it O'Hare Axonal Deepest Might? The 4-mana 4/4 red guy that if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent, or non-combat damage to an opponent, it deals damage equal to his power.
Oh, so
There's
there's
another
four
effect for
instead
that.
of one. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
There's the 4 red. There's the red dude that whenever a red source you control deals damage, it does that much damage. Plus
Yeah,
2
that
or
was the
something
other
like
one that I was thinking of too.
Yeah.
The dwarf.
We're approaching a critical mass of where that effect might be relevant enough to try. And
Yeah, no,
So-
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I mean, and if you have,
I really like
yeah.
it for that Torwalk. If you're if I've only seen Torwalky in Pauper because he's an uncommon legend, but I kind of like that for him. That and some of these other effects that you could play in cEDH to where that actually might become quite a lot of damage quite fast. The issue then is how do we slow everybody down? I guess Blood Moon, or if you're in Rakdos, there's not outside of the artifact stuff. There's not a lot of stacks pieces, so.
Right.
I don't know how you win there, but anyways, yeah, definitely an interesting creature. You had a couple more, and then I have one to add. So run through yours, and then we'll.
Okay, so the next one on my list is Might of the Meek. 1 red for an instant. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. It also gets +1/+0 until end of turn if you control a mouse. Who doesn't have a computer mouse? Come on. And it says draw a card on it. So the 2 decks I thought of this for, and I'm sure Fergie probably doesn't need another of this effect, but who knows? Maybe. The other deck I was thinking of is Zada. It seems like another Zada card. Target a creature, draw a card.
It's also common, and Zada is actually really, really strong in Pauper. So this is probably a shoo-in for them for sure. Because you target Zada and then it hits all of your creatures. You draw 6 more cards or whatever. I think Feather was the other one that was in. I haven't seen that in ages, but Feather was the other cEDH viable version of that sort of effect that this could be run in. So if you're still running Feather, you got a new piece.
Birds of a feather like mice together. I don't know. There you go. That's all I've got for this one. It's just, there's a +1/+0 and getting trampled not irrelevant. I suppose that's not irrelevant. A +1/+0 part. You probably aren't going to control a mouse to activate that unless you have a changeling or something weird. But yeah, target creature gains trample. Draw a card. So.
Yeah, even just in a Stormy list that's just looking for cantrips like this, giving a creature that you have trample just for shits and giggles to draw a card, not terrible. 1 mana draw a card is on rate.
And I'm sure they're not sad to see more 1 mana cards printed that do that, because the more critical mass of those we get, the more consistent and better those decks get. So,
yep.
The only other one I've got in mono red is a fun little raccoon. It's Prosperous Bandit.
Trash Panda.
This one might be a stretch, but here we are. It's 1 red and 2 generic for a 2/2 raccoon rogue. It's got offspring of just 1 generic that has first strike, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many tapped treasure tokens.
So PFB is good for a reason. It's the same exact cost as PFB. It's 1 more to get 2 of them, but PFB applies it to all your creatures. So in that case, you can get up to 3. In this case, you can only get up to 2. But that's not necessarily bad. If you're already on PFB, this is just another PFB effect. But then again, when we're going towards card quality, PFP is just better, and that's all there is to it. So,
yeah, this one has the weird advantage of it's whenever this creature deals combat damage, you get that many tap treasure tokens.
Oh,
so
sure.
If you're doing something where you're buffing its power, maybe you get a bunch. I don't know. I
didn't even realize that you actually can get 3 off of this. It's 4 mana, so it's a 4 mana PFB, and you can get 3 tokens because it's 2 damage, 2 treasures, and then 1 damage, 1 treasure. It's right there with PFB. I think PFB probably edges it out slightly.
I think
on a card quality level, but you may, if you're creature heavy, you're in Naya or something, maybe you want 2 of this effect. If you need a lot of, but they're tapped. Yeah, that's where the weakness is. They're tapped.
Where it's rough. Yeah, I was thinking of it in maybe a Dargo deck where a Dargo.
You don't give a shit. You sack the treasures.
Where you're in mono red and you're just looking for something to generate treasures to sack to Dargo. Maybe, I don't know. Again, this one might be a stretch, but it's cute and it's a raccoon rogue. And
unfortunately, because of that tap clause, this feeds the fuck out of Dockside. If you're hitting, even if you're just making the 3 treasures, that's 3 extra Dockside treasures you can't sack. We just talked our way into me going, this is poo poo.
Fair. It's probably
But
like I said, Dargo deck maybe. Otherwise, probably not.
nah, it's probably fine. And if you're able to sack artifacts for whatever, you maybe.
I mean, if you have this and PFB in play, you can sack the tapped treasure tokens.
That's true.
PFB,
but
so.
then, yeah, why not just have PFB to begin with, right?
But you can have them both together, like PFB and his little trash panda buddy.
Trash Panda buddies.
Yeah, there you go. Build your own. What is that freaking Marvel shit? What is that? Guardians of the Galaxy. There you go. Build your own Guardians of the Galaxy. There you have it.
Oh fuck! What was his name?
We got Tree of Perdition Groot. We got Star Lord and PFB and God only knows Raccoon going on here. Yeah. Next.
Oh God! Why can I not remember his name right now? Rocket.
There you go.
Rocket Raccoon. Yeah. Yeah. As you said, next. This one is just as bad, if not worse. No, this is worse. This one I just thought was cute just because of its text, and I wanted to have a little bit more to talk about and actually add something to the list because Kirk came up with pretty much the whole list. So this one is Hearthborn Battler. It is a 2/3 Lizard Warlock for 2 generic and a red. It has haste. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, it deals 2 damage to target opponent. I wish that said deals 2 damage to anything. Then this would be probably actually pretty good. Being limited to opponents is kind of shit, but at the floor, it's a 3 mana 2/3 with haste. So you are gonna, if you're in a Timna Rog list or Timna Jessica list, this is a easy turn 2-ish drop that gets in, deals some damage, draws you some cards, maybe. Any other red deck that doesn't care about combat, then that part doesn't matter, and it's just going to do some damage. At its absolute ceiling, everybody, including yourself, in a turn cycle casts 2 spells, and you deal 8 damage to someone. And if you can do that consistently through a whole game, you're going to do a lot of damage to someone. Is it going to be fast enough to kill them before they get to their combo? Who knows? And usually it's not just like, this one guy at the table is the guy we have to focus. It's usually everybody is a pretty equal threat. So maybe not the best card for cEDH, but I liked it because it was another card with that. Whenever a thing happens twice, you get a thing. We've had lots of those recently, Fairy Masterminds and other things like that. Obviously, drawing cards stronger than dealing 2 damage to an opponent, but like we had said already, there are some red cards that will make this damage bigger. Not the ones that we discussed, but there are some that.
I was thinking that exact reasons, like the little otter might go in that. Is it Ojer, O'Hare, whatever that the Axonal Deepest Might, the 4 mana 4/4 guy from that set where
Ojer, I don't know, but yeah, that is like it's less than 4. It's only doing 2, so it would do 4. And
then this is the perfect example of that, because if your opponents are playing 2 spells, you don't have to deal it to that opponent. You can deal it to the Adnaz player, the Rog side deck, etc.
Yeah, and that was my point, was that you could focus it at somebody. It wasn't necessarily like you're hitting everybody that casts the 2 spells. You're hitting whoever the fuck you want to hit, and at its absolute ceiling, as you go around the table, you could potentially do 8 damage to a player. If you do that over the course, 4 turns, and that kills somebody because they've already digged themselves for fetches and ancient tombs and mana crypts and mana vaults, and they've already done those things. They've already dealt themselves 3-4 damage, and you only have to get around the table 3 times maybe, and you kill them. But that's Magical Christmas Land. It's most likely you're going to sit this down. If this is your first spell, then you can immediately cast a second spell and actually do the thing, and then also ding them for 2 more because it has haste if they're open. So say you manage to luck into a thing where you can cast this turn 2, and the Adnos player has no blockers. You play another spell, you ding them for 2, you swing into them for 2, they've taken 4 extra damage, and then everybody, including that player, plays 2 spells. Now you've hit them for 8 more. That's already, 12 damage to one player. That's not nothing. But it's also just not reliably fast enough to be a thing. I don't think this is going to see play too much, but there's going to be some deck where this might actually work.
Yep, I think that O'Hare deck is probably the one where I'd probably maybe give this a shot. The nice thing about it too is it could be more than 8 damage in a cycle just by itself. If two opponents get into a counter battle, somebody plays two
Yeah.
spells, it does 2 damage to them. On their same turn, another player plays two spells. You can deal 2 damage to whoever.
It is each turn. So yeah, there are scenarios where it could be more, but like I still think that Magic Christmas Land ceiling is like 8, and that's what you're going to get.
Great.
And that's most likely not going to happen anywhere past the first like 2-3 turns. So if you're not dropping this early, it's probably not getting you much value. But as a Tymna attacker, it's got haste. It's got a decent sized body. Sure, it might get in, might get you some cards. Might also, do some damage. Everybody's casting more than one spell a turn most of the time. There's not a lot of rule law running around right now to stop that. In a rule of law meta, this is dog shit. Don't play it. I think that covers red. So now we got one mono green, we've got one colorless, and we've got a couple multicolor, and then we're calling it a day. So wherever you want to go next, up to you.
Oh, we'll go mono green. Let's knock them out. So this one is another squirrel. What a weird set. Bloodroot Apothecary. 1 green and 2 generic for a 3/3 squirrel druid. It has Toxic 2. When Bloodroot enters, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. So there you go. You're getting your mana back, and you have to give it to an opponent too, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, that player gets 2 poison counters.
We are in a meta that's heavy enough of like, there's clues out there, there's foods out there, there's bloods out there, there's lots of things that get sacked. This is basically just like stop dockside shenanigans and that sort of thing from happening, and then they're just going to dig and do whatever they have to do to get rid of this. Because
there's like
Toxic 2, what does it say? Get 2 poison counters. I mean, you can only get 10 poison counters, so at most you can only crack 4 treasures before this thing kills you. So most likely, if this is on the field, people aren't even going to play their dockside, or if they do, they have removal for it. But it is kind of a nice little stacks piece. There's another one like that I played in Pauper for a little bit that I haven't seen in cEDH, but is kind of a card that I think might do okay in cEDH, and it's Fengrand Marauder. It's like 4 or 5 mana, mono green creature. It's got a big body, like 5/5 or something. But it says anytime an artifact hits the grave, you gain like 5 life. It's fucking stupid. Like, the amount of life you would gain if you were just on somebody that's doing dockside loops is insane. But it doesn't matter because 90% of the time, their combo wins the game anyway. So that's why it doesn't see play. This kind of feels along those same lines where it's like, yes, this stops a popular strategy. This is a great, for green especially. Green doesn't really have a lot of stacks pieces, outside of like Oof and like Root Maze and a couple others. So having that stop people from doing whatever. I don't like the fact that it comes in and gives somebody else a treasure, but it does give you a treasure too, so you're basically paying 2 mana for this thing. It also does have Toxic on its own, so you can, if somebody does say, fuck it, I'm going to sack 4 things, and they get 8 things, like, you can if you can get in on them, you kill them, right? So
yeah, it might be a trap because there's really not a good, that I'm aware of, toxic strategy in cEDH at the moment. So the space this really competes with, like you said, it competes with like a Manglehorn is where I think of it the most, because it's the same CMC, 3 mana, it comes into play, slows down or stops artifacts, right? So this is good against docksides.
But it doesn't stop artifacts. It just stops treasures.
Right.
Artifacts don't give a fuck about this.
Yeah, Magda absolutely does not want to see this card come into play ever. Tivit does not want to see this card come into play ever. And dockside decks don't want to see it play. Now, it's a simple 3 mana, 3/3, so the whole it dies to removal is, sure, it's absolutely relevant. It does happen. This card's probably a trap. It's probably not good enough to play, but it's an interesting option.
Mono green or like Groll in particular. I think this goes into a Groll list because you're just like, well, it's not necessarily stopping them, but it is slowing them down. And that's all you can ask for. You can probably play this in Jund as well, because you're still in that same boat of like, everybody else is still doing shit with tokens. And so they're going to eventually take some poisons, right?
Yeah,
And then it's just
Corporal
a matter
definitely doesn't want
of
to see this with the
it's
player.
just a
Yeah,
matter
like,
of it whether or not you can actually finish with the poison. And the problem is that this kind of lends itself to being played in decks that don't give a shit about poison counters or toxic or infect. You're just playing this in some random deck and it just happens to be a piece that does this thing. So like the toxic part of it and the poison counter part of it doesn't even really matter all that much, and that's where it becomes kind of pointless.
yeah, I mean, I
Unless
can see
you
it.
play it in a full on toxic slash infect deck, and this is just another
Right,
great piece. And if you're on that,
right.
like, I don't know, maybe this is the thing that pushes it over the top, maybe not. I'm not sure.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I think this is another quiver in that arrow, or arrow in that quiver to get that deck to be one step closer to maybe a viable thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, hell, they keep printing cards. Give it another 3 weeks, we'll be talking about another set. So,
I
every little
mean,
effect like this is just one more little. Hey, that's
this is
one
just
little one rung on the ladder closer to being viable in a poison slash toxic strategy. So,
this is just another card I wish was common, because I run a toxic deck in Pauper that's Golgari, and the commander is Necrogen Rot Priest. Came out like all will be one or one of those sets from last year. But it was it had toxic whatever, but then it says like all of your creatures that if they apply a poison counter, they apply +1 instead. This would push that over the top for sure, but can't be played. And I'm not playing that in cEDH. And when I even tried Infect in cEDH, like I think Skittles, Skitherix, I think that's the only one that's ever seen cEDH play, and that was years and years ago. And I don't think that there's anything currently that can actually get there. As much as like that, those couple of sets from last year added the toxic thing, and that compounded with Infect should theoretically push all of it over the top. The problem is it's two different fucking mechanics. Like, they both apply the poison counters, but neither one of them interact with each other, which is fucked. Like, they should have just either kept it Infect or eroded everything else to be toxic. Because Infect is a weird thing where it's like, if you hit something for damage, you don't actually deal the damage, you deal neg1 counters, like Wither, which is fucking weird. And then, if you hit a player, it's not damage, it's just poison counters. But then Toxic was like, no, fuck that. You do the damage still, but then the poison counters happen. But then it's no neg1s against creatures you hit. And they were just like, well, like, why? Why fucking complicate it? You could just have both things that basically do the same thing, just be the same thing, and we would have had this extra boon towards that sort of form, that sort of archetype, and been good. But instead, we have two things that are not really, they're not at odds, but they're not synergistic. They're just kind of, they both exist, and you have two of those things in your deck, and maybe you get there, but Finn the Fangbearer, I think might be the only other one, and that requires like a lot of death touch creatures in your deck to then apply poison. That plus toxic plus infect plus what this is doing, maybe you have a deck there, but I still don't think it's fast enough.
yeah, it's getting closer. I know there's some green like one drop that whenever your shit gets targeted, you give poison counter, infect counter, poison counter, whatever the hell the counters. I can't remember what it's called. There are a few Nadu lists that run it because they can do like the Seekings, Blessings, and all that other stuff. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
they can win that way.
There's stuff
but
out there, but
it's so rare, and I don't even know that it's good in those decks. Who knows? But yeah, I think this is, like I said, this is just one little baby rung on the ladder closer to getting some infect, some poison counters action going in cEDH, which I'm all for. We need some shake up in the format in different ways than just,
I mean,
incrementally better cards for Rogsai and friggin' Blue Farm.
It's the closest thing to like an aggro deck that could exist in the format is poison, because you only have to do the 10 instead of having to do 120 damage to kill your opponents, you only have to do 30, right? Essentially. So that makes it a lot easier, and aggro doesn't exist in cEDH because it's just not fast enough. It appears in standard, I'm sure probably modern. I don't know about other formats that are older, but also I'm sure probably Pioneer as well. And then it also is a thing in Pauper EDH, but it's not a thing in cEDH because it's just never been fast enough. And I've always thought that Infect is probably the thing that makes it fast enough, because it's like the cheat code. The problem is that you you need kind of like a Kedis effect. Like Kedis, for those who may not know, came out with the original Commander Legends a couple years ago. It's a partner card. It's one generic, one red. It's a 1/1, and it says commander creatures you control, like, deal their damage to everybody. So basically, if you have a Kedis with like a Malcolm, you hit one player with Malcolm, Kedis triggers says you hit all of them, you do the 2 damage to everybody, and you make 3 treasures because of Malcolm's clause. If you add a curiosity to that, you also are drawing 3 cards, blah, blah, blah. So that sort of strategy is viable in Pauper, but like in this format, not so much. If we could have some sort of symmetrical, like, if you hit somebody with a thing that gives them a poison counter, add a poison counter to all opponents, now you're talking. Then aggro becomes actually viable in cEDH, I think.
Meat's back on the menu then, eh?
Meat's back on the menu, boys.
Okay, so this one, Bark Form Harvester. 3 mana, 3 generic mana, 2/3 shapeshifter. It's a changeling. It has reach, and it has 2 generic. Put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. There are 3 decks that will consider this card, and if you can even call them 3 decks, but the first deck that I think will actually try this, believe it or not, is Magda, because this is a colorless dwarf, an artifact dwarf at that. So, boom, it works for their shenanigans with their combo
roaming throne type thing.
Yeah, and it has the 2 generic, put a card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. So for a lot of people that don't know that Magda, some versions of Magda play the artifact that the name of it escapes me. It's you sacrifice it, shuffle your graveyard in your library, gain 5 life.
Elixir of Immortality.
There you go. Some versions of it play that. They used to. I don't know if they still do. But anywho, some of them played that because their combo effect would be using a card that, like a twin shot sniper, where they can deal damage and then, shuffle it back in and then draw it again and then deal damage, etc., etc. This is a way to get around having to play that card in your deck. You don't need to play a 1 mana, shuffle your graveyard in your library, terrible effect. When this can do it with your infinite treasures, you can put the cards back from your graveyard back on the bottom of your library and do it again. Like, what's the spell bomb, the red spell bomb, you sacrifice it to deal 2 damage.
Pyrite
spell bomb. I play that in my Magda list as a finisher because it can also kill opposition agent, because that deck absolutely hates opposition agent. So this is another way to just recycle that. There's other combos that recycle cards from the graveyards back in the library. This one can do it while also being the artifact dwarf they want. That's slam dunk for sure. But any list in general that wants to be able to recur cards from graveyard but doesn't necessarily have access to that, so like a non-blue deck, like you don't have Archaeomancer, you don't have Mystic Sanctuary, you don't have those cards that will put a card from your graveyard back on top or back in your hand, this is the kind of deck where if you have a way to repeatedly tutor, say you can flicker, I don't know, an Imperial Recruiter, you can flicker something else that tutors for whatever. If you can flicker and or replay and or just generally speaking do a tutor over and over again, this can put whatever it was that's in your grave back in your library so that you can tutor it up and do it again. So sure. Anything that likes those sorts of loops is going to like this card. Yep. The other 2 decks I was thinking about for this specifically are 2 decks that really like the bottom of your library. The bottom of your library is very relevant. And those decks are Grenzo, which I haven't played against in a hot minute, but
he used to be pretty fucking fire. Like, maybe it's another card that helps set him back up.
Right, possibly. And then River Song, because you draw from the bottom of your library. So this is another way to put the shit on the bottom, redraw it, etc., etc. So just another, and I don't know if it'll make either of the, I think this would probably make Grenzo lists, maybe. Might make River Song lists. I don't know for sure, but I think it definitely, I'm going to 100% slam this in my Magda list. So those are the 3 big decks I had in mind right away for this. There might be other ones that I'm not thinking of, but
I think Magda for sure, as far as like top end, actually still competitive decks. Grenzo has fallen out of favor, but this is another piece that could make him a little bit better. And I don't think Grenzo was ever bad. It was always kind of pretty good. It was just kind of janky because of the whole draw from the bottom thing, and you have to run some cards to make that happen. But
plus, it's a shapeshifter, so it is a, if you're Goblin Matron tutoring up a goblin from your library, or wizard cycling, or whatever, this is all of those in your library. So, and Cavern of Souls makes this uncounterable if you're on that.
Yeah,
So there you go.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about either. Is that anything that's like a tutor for a particular creature type, if something's not changeling, you can get it. So it's the same thing. Like you can wizard cycle for like a crypt swap or whatever. Anything that has changeling on it. So
Yep, and this
definitely
one, so
something
you
to
can
consider.
tutor it as a creature, tutor it as an artifact. Who knows? I mean, I think it's cool. I think I like it. It's one of those, I looked at it twice and I thought, is this really good enough? Then I thought more about it. I'm like, why is this not in my Magda deck already? So, and it's a common, so I love that too.
Yep.
I don't know if there's any popper decks that use the graveyard for this kind of shenanigan, but Islam, you
I
would know infinitely better than I
I
on that one.
I think that it could see some play for sure. There's something out there that would probably use it. I don't know off the top of my head, but at this point we've got two left. These are both multicolored cards. I'll read this one off. So the next one here is Lily Splash Mentor. This is a frog druid that's a 4/4 for 4 CMC. It's 2 generic green and a blue. It has reach, and it has an activated ability that costs 1 generic, a green, a blue. Exile target creature you control, return to the battlefield under control with a 1/1 counter on it, activate only as a sorcery. So if you have any ETB stuff in your deck, then you're in Simic. Like, this is pretty good, because obviously you're going to bounce and replay said thing, get the ETB again. Also comes in with a 1/1 counter on it. There are a lot of cards that have been printed over the years that care about, like, if this creature has a card on it, XYZ thing happens. We already talked about a couple earlier. The evolved creatures that, like, you just flicker them, they come back in, they get the counter, and now they are online, so to speak, or their ability is improved. So this has some use. It's 4 CMC, which is kind of rough, but just being able to flicker at will any ETBs you got. I mean, flickering at Dockside, obviously, very good. If you're able to make what is it, 6 mana? You have if you can make six mana, this does the thing, because it's
it'd only be 4 because it doesn't put it to hand. It puts it right back to the battlefield.
oh right, so it's yeah, correct. So you only need to make 4. So if your Dockside makes 4 mana or more, you flicker this, Dockside comes in, blah blah blah, you get an extra treasure, you do it again, you do it again, you do it again.
This one is your teamer Emil. It's the same 3 mana, blink Dockside, do your shit. This is blue, so it pitches to forces again. It's green, so it pitches to force of whatever the hell the green force is that kills artifacts or enchantments. So it's better than being a white card like Emil for that purpose. It is sorcery speed, so that sucks, because Emil can be at instant. But if you're in Teamer and you want to flicker your Dockside, boom, there it is, right there on a new 4 mana 4/4 Frog Druid. I mean, Teamer Sabretooth is what? With Dockside Teamer Sabretooth, you need 4 mana to bounce it and replay it, so you have to make, 5 treasures to go infinite? This is 4. So there you go. It's cheaper than Teamer Dockside.
All right, so we got one last one. Read this off, and we're going to call it a day.
This little guy I like quite a bit because I like Grumgolian Gruel. So again, this one might be cute, better cute than good or whatever, but it's Gev Scaled Scorch. It's a red and a black for a 3/2 lizard mercenary. It has ward of pay 2 life, so your opponent's target with anything, it's countered unless they pay 2 life. Super easy to do. This is one of the weakest wards they printed, unfortunately. Other creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev deals 1 damage to target opponent. So the reason this is kind of cool is because persist creatures with sack effects. You get damage in with this little guy. Boom, all your persist creatures come in with +1/+1 counters. If they die, they come back with a -1/-1 counter. They get at least 1 +1/+1 counter if at least one opponent's taken damage this turn, so those cancel each other out. Wash, rinse, repeat. You have an infinite sack outlet enabling commander in the command zone as a 2 mana 3/2. It might be on the fringe side of cEDH, but I think it's pretty cool. And there are times where you just have like the lizard, the Impact Tremors lizard we talked about earlier. When a creature enters the battlefield, you do 1 damage to each opponent. The next creature you play that's cheap comes in with 3 1/1 counters on it. So I play a lot of the tap to deal 1 damage to each opponent type effects in this deck. Now all your creatures are entering the battlefield +3/+3 bigger permanently. Lends to a decent little beatdown strategy while you're trying to dig for combos. So
like that's all well and good. I feel like there should be maybe it doesn't exist, but it's whenever you cast a lizard spell, it deals 1 damage to target opponent. I feel like there should be like some sort of lizard that like you could cast and then bounce infinitely to like just make this happen. Like with Curio or some of the cards we talked about already that bounce and or exile, return, blah blah blah. I feel like there's got to be some card that's got the lizard typing to where you can make that just end the game. But
Well, if you're on Curio, we talked about the little 1-mana lizard earlier. That's the 1/2 that has landfall. There's the 2-mana one.
The black one and the red one. Yeah, they can both go in the stack. They're both lizards.
They both have offspring. So if you're a dockside looping them, you have infinite mana. You have your payoffs. So, yep, I think he might be cuter than good, but by God, I like him. I like Grumgully. This is the Rakdos Grumgully. So yeah, so you've got super good tutors because you got blacks. You've got the best tutors for everything. You've got reds. You've got dockside. You've got Underworld Breach. So yeah, I don't know. That's why I think this little guy, while he's not the best, he's not going to be tier S or tier A or whatever. He will be fringe, but I think he will surprise people and win a lot of games because he's cheap. He comes out. He's quick. He's efficient. And a lot of the persist creatures that he can capitalize with are goblins. So you can play your Goblin Matron to tutor your dockside or your combo piece, and just the versatility to kind of shift between those two lines is really strong. So,
yeah, I kind of underestimated it. I know we already played the deck, the gameplay, the pod, and I remember not thinking too highly of any of the creatures that we brought as far as commanders go. And even looking at the set in general, it was just a lot of underwhelming stuff. Yeah, now seeing the couple lizard creature things that are pingers that you brought up that ideally work the best in Obnix, but can also work in a deck like this, or even the Torwalkie, like I brought up. There's a little more value in the set than I initially thought, but I still will say, without a doubt, the cards that'll see the most play are that Mockingbird, maybe that Bounce Spell, and it's basically all the blue cards. Like everything else is kind of okay, but not going to see play in a lot of decks. They're going to see play in like 1 or 2 decks here or there. So.
Yeah, like the Mockingbird is probably the most versatile, and the colorless artifact creature will see some play, and yeah, who knows on the rest. Yeah, like you said, the blue cards you'll probably see the most. You'll most likely run into in the wild at first, at least, until the next broken thing happens, or we find another weird combo, or they print a new set with new broken mechanics that break these. Who knows?
If you exclude all the sets besides the standard sets, it's typically like, couple underpowered kind of middling sets, and then you get this really fucking busted. Like when original Eldraine came out, people were like, what the fuck? Like, so many of these cards need to be banned. Like, Oko's busted. Oh my god. And then you have sets like this where you're like struggling to try and find like the best cards. So we're on a downturn right now. We have them every year, ups and downs, blah, blah, blah. With the Commander format, it's a little different because we get everything. So every single Secret Lair, every single Modern Horizon set, every single Master set, every single set that's not standard legal, we have access to. So we have a lot more. We're spoiled for choice, for sure. But we also have the thing where it's like we have this huge expectation of card quality. And if it's not there, it just doesn't see play. So this is one of those sets where this is standard focused. And standard's probably getting shook the fuck up. But I don't play that shit, so I don't know, don't care. The cards we discussed, they are at least... a couple of them are going to be pretty good. The rest of them, we'll see. I definitely want to do some sort of retrospective at some point, because I know that we've talked shit about cards that ended up being good, and I know we've overhyped cards that ended up being bad, so I would like to review that at some point, but whatever the case. These are the cards that we thought were at least worth talking about. Some of them we're going to see play, some won't. Some will be better than others. Some might see play in Pauper, some might see play in Casual. Closing thoughts? Anything else?
I'm okay with the slightly underpowered set after they dumped MH3 on us, so it's okay if they pump the brakes a little bit in my book. So
that's all we got for you guys today. If you think we missed something huge, please let us know in the comments below. We appreciate your feedback. We're 2 dudes that have opinions. They might be wrong. They might be right. They probably don't matter at all. But here we are. We're going to give them to you anyway, and we'll see. Next episode, probably something a little different. Episode after that, probably another set review. that's just the nature of the way shit has been going the last couple of years. So either way, we appreciate y'all watching, listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. We will highlight your comments if you do reply to this. We'll talk about it in the next video. So check that out. If you want to support the channel, there's a Patreon. All the links and shit in the description below. See you guys in a couple weeks, maybe longer. Who knows? We'll see. Until next time, have a good one.
Later.